My name is Paula Stalker, and I am so excited to introduce Miss Loretta Craig, learn about soil health and human health and how it all connects. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for attending. I know it's a busy time for everyone. My husband and I have a small homestead just outside the 435 loop over by Legends KC and the Sporting Complex or Sporting KC Complex. So if you're ever out this way, please drop in and give us a call. I'm going to start my talk by reciting the herbal blessing that I learned when I went to herbal school. When it was my gift to myself when I turned 50, and it goes like this. The silver rain, the golden sun, the fields where scarlet poppies run, and all the ripples of the earth are in the food that we now eat. So as we sit for this meal with grateful hearts, we always feel that we are eating rain and sun and fields where scarlet poppies run. So we're not really eating that chicken and broccoli casserole. We're actually eating rain and sun, fields, and the energetic ripples that run through everything. So I'm not sure I really got how interdependent we are as an ecosystem, how that affected me as a person. Until about 8 years ago, I was listening to a talk of a Catholic nun online. The name of the talk was The Fate of the Earth. And she, as part of her mission work, has a farm someplace on the East Coast. And her talk was about the ecological crisis of our time. And in the talk, one of her lines was that we cry ocean tears. And that's when it hit me that we really are the earth, that we cry ocean tears, that we are that interrelated and interdependent as an ecosystem. So humus, our common ground, our common home. The three words human, humus, and humility all share the same root word of the earth. The problem is that humans have now lost their connection to humus. And I think it's because of the way we describe or understand the term humility. Too often we think humility means to be submissive or to be less than or to give up our power in some way. But I choose to understand the word humility as recognizing that I am a part of nature, a small, unique, special little snowflake, but I am only a part. So I practice humility when I literally fall to my knees. I fall close to the earth in awe and wonder and reverence for the mystery of it all, for the wholeness of it all, the oneness of it all. And that's how I practice the value of humility. Recognizing that I am a part of nature, not apart from nature and not separated from nature. And to borrow a line and adapt a line from Carl Sagan, we are made of soil stuff. The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, and the carbon in our apple pies are all made from soil stuff. And this is a book that was written by a woman who was wondering why all of her patients were getting so sick, and they were actually farm workers. And she did her research and came to understand that our soil has roughly the same ratio of nitrogen to carbon and a similar range of normal pH as the human body. The carbon, nitrogen, and minerals and vitamins that are building blocks in our own bodies are derived from soil. So in other words, we are of the soil. But as humans, we've broken this link between human and we don't think of ourselves as humus beings. So therefore, the two systems that we're going to talk about today, the human body system and the humus soil system, really aren't functioning very well, and they're not functioning well together. Sometimes we get carried away with our hubris because we are a very clever species, and we think of ourselves as the apex species. So, we are clever. We can convert the precious gifts of Mother Earth into tools that allow us to fly to the moon, or gadgets of like a computer that we can carry around in our back pockets. However, without the value of humility, we forget that we're a part of nature. And that as a part of nature, we were given the gift of life, and with that comes responsibility. And that responsibility is to be good managers of the soil, good managers of the ecosystem. And right now, we're not doing such a good job. And evidence that the human body system is not functioning very well is this epidemic, really, of chronic disease in America. 1 in 2 adults have a chronic disease. This is usually a lifetime disease. And it's really good for business. It's really great for the economy, but it's terrible for our culture. It's terrible for our ability to have healthy, strong children and strong families and healthy and strong societies. So we have to, correct this situation of the brokenness of our bodies. And evidence that the humus system is not working well is that the skyrocketing costs for the inputs that we have to apply to all of the fields around the Midwest just to get a crop out of the ground is really outrageous. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get a crop out of the ground. And you might be familiar that we had to give $30 billion in subsidies to a very small portion of the population, which is the farmers. And that's, again, just more evidence that our farming system is not very resilient. What we need to do is apply soil principles that the NRCS talks to us about. That's the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And the main evangelist of these soil principles was Ray Archuleta. And I was thrilled to have the opportunity to get to meet him earlier this year, right before COVID hit. Ray Archuleta and many other of my soil health heroes, rock stars, came to Salina, Kansas. So I went out there and got to meet Ray Archuleta, and he didn't disappoint. But he's been promoting these soil principles for over 30 years, probably. So as gardeners and as farmers, we really need to commit these soil principles to memory and be mindful of them so that we can be good stewards of the earth. So we have to keep the soil covered. We have to have a living root in the ground as much as possible. Minimize disturbance, and that includes mechanical and chemical disturbance. Increase our diversity. You want that synergy that comes from cover crops. You want to integrate animals like we do here on our farm and our homestead. And if not animals, at least pollinators. So this is a photo from Ray Archuleta, and he says that this soil is naked, hungry, thirsty, and running a fever. So as the apex species, we are not managing this piece of soil for the soil principles that promote soil health. There's no cover, there's no living roots, there's lots of disturbance. Maybe that's chemical, maybe that's mechanical. There's no diversity, there's no animal integration, and there's no pollinators because there is no life here. So as kind of a joke, I used to say, if we continue to piss off Mother Earth, she's gonna shrug us off like a bad virus. But it's not a very flippant comment that I can say in jest, but to be trying to make a point, it's a rather scary thing to think of now. This picture comes from the pharmacology doctor that wrote that book. On the left is a picture of your skin, and on the right is a photo of the layers of the earth. And we wouldn't dream about going out into the elements, into the frigid cold, into the blazing sun without protecting our skin. Yet we continually don't apply the same soil principles to Mother Earth and try and keep her covered, which is the first soil principle. And they say that bare soil to Mother Earth is like a wound. So we don't have to look too far around in the Midwest to see lots of examples of bare soil that can be very painful and hard on Mother Earth. So Wendell Berry says, whether we and our politicians know it or not, nature is party to all our deals and decisions, and she has more votes, a longer memory, and a sterner sense of justice than we do. So Wendell Berry does have a really good way of talking about taking the long view of what we're doing here in this short life that we have. So the new movement is regenerative agriculture, and it really hopes to shift the paradigm. The old word used to be sustainability, but how can we really improve the dramatic improvement in health that we need to do by sustaining a soil organic matter of 1%? We really need to regenerate the soil organic matter to 3, 5, 7%. I think when they came over on the covered wagons, it was more like 20%. So we've got plenty of room for improvement. And when we're trying to make a change, it's often good to know and to understand how we got to the situation that we're in. We got here by competing with nature, by trying to dominate nature, by disturbing the soil with lots and lots of chemicals, and of course, tillage and plowing. And we have monocrops planted. Now, you and I wouldn't dream of trying to exist on a monoculture diet of corn chips and tofu, yet we expect all of our wildlife and all of our pollinators to exist on a diet of corn and soy. So as far as the eye can see, in the Midwest, we have lots of corn and soy, and this is just a reason why we need to encourage more farmers to plant more cover crops. And of course, we've had a really reductionistic mindset when it comes to agriculture. That's how science works in general. We want to reduce the problems down to the smallest denominator and try and find out an answer. But unfortunately, the answer in agriculture has often tended to be something that ends in "-cide", and that would be a fungicide, an herbicide, an insecticide, and a pesticide. And all those sides basically mean death. And this often leads to farmer suicides and sometimes homicides, all these side words that you can play with that are so bad. But we know that the farmers have been feeling really despondent about their farms for a long time, that farmer suicides have been an issue for a while. But on the flip side, we have these new guys, these regenerative farmers, and I go to these conferences and I meet guys and they are on fire. They are so fired up about this new idea of regenerative farming. And what they're full of life, and what they're trying to do is create more life on their farms. So how do they do this? They do this by partnering with nature, protecting the soil, increasing the diversity with a synergy of cover crops, and thinking very holistically, very systems thinking on their farms. So I absolutely love this, this poster. It's from the United Nations in 2015. And I think this was the year that Vandana Shiva actually came to Kansas City. But at any rate, I think you should find this on the internet and print it out and try and study it a little bit. So at the bottom, it says healthy soils for a healthy life, and soil, the foundation of nutrition. And then in the yellow, orange, and red off to the side, it says the soil degradation leads to the loss of soil micro and macronutrients. And this is, in essence, this poster is the essence of the issues with soil health. So underneath the plant, you see the NPK, the soil macronutrients, and then you see all the micronutrients. And in the orange, it's basically saying, these nutrient poor soils are not able to pull up these micronutrients into the produce so that so we can eat them, and then our bodies can use the micronutrients for all of our bodily metabolism and all of our functions. And if we don't get these micronutrients into our food, then in the red, it says over 2 billion people suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. And again, this is right in line with what we said earlier about all of the chronic disease. And it's a problem with, making the choice to eat this food, but also having this type of food available. So how do we do this? How do we rectify this problem? Basically, the green circles on the bottom are the soil principles that Ray Archuleta was talking about. They're the same thing. So this is an international promotion for soil health. And you know that there's a million different ways to farm globally. You can imagine all the different ways to garden and farm, but the principles are universal. So if you apply the principles, they should work. They should always work. So I, again, encourage you to find this slide and print it out. So have our fruits and vegetables become less nutritious? The answer is a yes, according to the USDA, that we do show deficiencies in micronutrients such as iron and iodine and folate and zinc. And we only need these micronutrients in tiny, tiny doses, but they are vital to our development and to our disease prevention. And one of the problems is that nutrient-dense crops have never been the goal of big food. The goal has always been, can we ship it? Can we store it? Does it get to a big size? Can it sit on a shelf for a long time? And it's going to take science a long time to, or the industry a long time to get there. It really has to be a demand by the consumers. Because we can continue to support the supplement industry, which is thriving because people are trying to cover their bases. But we need to know that the most bioavailable form for our bodies, we evolved with vegetables, and we really need to get our micronutrients from our produce. So this is, again, one reason why we have to get consumers to demand a product that's nutrient dense. So I really like to anthropomorphize things, and I like to do it with my gardening because it just seems to make it more fun to give human qualities to my gardening. So we're talking about we have to have healthy soil. So how do we get healthy soil? We want to feed it something healthy. So what do we feed the soil? What does the soil eat? So you might say compost or mulch or manure, but I'm looking for the main source of energy. Can I hear you? Can't hear you. It's interactive. So what's the greatest miracle of life? I think of this as the greatest miracle of life, and it takes my breath away. If I said, how do we get free food from the sun? Are you getting closer? So here I am. This is, if you said photosynthesize, you would be correct, photosynthesis. So here I am with my new granddaughter out photosynthesizing in my garden. And I like to recite this quote as if it's almost a prayer. And so sometimes I go out, throw my head back, tilt my head to the sun and say, sometimes I wish I could just photosynthesize so that just by being, just by shimmering at the meadow's edge or floating lazily on a pond, I could be doing the work of the world while standing silent in the sun. And I think it's always a good idea just to take a moment and recognize the miraculous ability of plants to convert the radiant energy of the sun into food. I mean, that's pretty amazing. That needs to be an act of humility to recognize and give thanks for that every day. So maybe we do photosynthesize in a way because the most bioavailable form of vitamin D is from sunlight. So you have to get out in the sun and photosynthesize your vitamin D. And here I am again out in my garden with my cover crops. That's sorghum, Sudan grass, and then a mix of mustard and turnips and whatnot. Okay, so I still like to do another photosynthesis activity with kids. I know we learned basic photosynthesis when we were in 6th grade, but I like to really embody my wisdom as much as possible and my knowledge. And at the heart of really understanding how to be a better gardener is really embodying this knowledge of photosynthesis. So this is a fun one to do with kids and kids at heart. So again, you go back out to the sunshine, you stand there with your head tilted up and you pretend you're a plant. And you're breathing in, you're accepting the radiant energy of the sun on your great big green solar collectors. And you're breathing in the carbon dioxide and you're drinking up the cool, clean, crisp water from deep in your roots. And it's all meeting right here in the green chlorophyll molecule. And that's where the magic happens. This is where the solar energy of the sun is converted into chemical energy, into the sweetness of life, into glucose, into sugar. And then that sugar goes out and feeds my body, it goes down and feeds my roots, and it finally goes down and feeds the soil. And then I eventually exhale and breathe off my oxygen. Because who needs oxygen? The humans. And who else needs oxygen? The microbes in the soil. Because remember, the soil is 25% air and 25% water and 45% minerals and 5%, if we're lucky, 5% organic matter. We got to keep working on that 5%. To continue the anthropomorphizing a little bit further, it's just really interesting how the human blood is so like plant blood. But if you look at a human red blood cell and a plant chlorophyll, it just, cracks me up how similar they are, except they're different. So at the center of a red blood cell is an iron ion, and at the center of a chlorophyll molecule is a magnesium ion. And you can see how with photosynthesis, you're making you're making sugar with carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, but you're not making magnesium and nitrogen. So that's when you have to have a good, healthy, functioning soil so that your plant can photosynthesize, because it needs to bring up some magnesium and some nitrogen to do it properly. So who eats this sugar that is done during photosynthesis? Elaine Ingham says, basically, who eats all the cake and cookies of photosynthesis? And if you said the soil microflora, you would be correct. The bacteria and fungi that really, as a culture, we've been very frightened of. And now with COVID, for good reason, there are some really bad actors out there. But if we want to join this regenerative movement, we really have to embrace working with these microbial partners and think of them as if we're in cooperation with them. And what we want to do is set the conditions for the soil health so that we can have all these unseen beneficial microbes working for us this whole time. And that the good guys outcompete the bad guys. And that way we don't have to use anything that ends inside. So we talked about how the plant eats, and that would be photosynthesis. You could say that the plant is the mouth of the soil. But where would the plant digestion happen? Where would the guts of the plant be, actually? So if you said the roots, you're pretty close. It's actually the rhizosphere, which is the intersection of the root and the microbes around the root. So how does the plant absorb these nutrients? The plant will send down the simple sugar. And so the simple microorganisms there will eat the sugar. And then the plant will say, okay, here's your sugar, but I really need some calcium, some potassium, some phosphorus. And then the microbes can go bring that back and supply the plant when it needs those minerals. So if you go out and you pull up a plant and you see all the soil clinging to the plant, this is actually the rhizosphere, the civilization of microbes right around the plant, this glue-like structure. And this microbial population is recycling and regenerating very rapidly. And when it does that, it aggregates and aerates the soil. And the minerals that are contained in the bodies of these microbes as they regenerate, as they die and born again and split and all that, these nutrients left behind are bioavailable for the absorption of the plant. So we really need to work in harmony with the soil to get it to function like it's supposed to, because if we use a synthetic fertilizer, it can so easily leach out and not be held in the stable soil matrix. So we need these microbial partners to mine the soil for us, but in a way that holds the nutrients right there in the soil profile. And we need lots of green solar collectors. That's our job. We're the managers. Our job is to ensure the conditions are correct so that we can grow them big and grow them fast. We got to get the seeds in the ground when we need to get the seeds into the ground, because we've got to convert that solar energy into life. Remember, free food from the sun. So this acquisition of nutrients is very similar to our own body. But unfortunately, most of us know more about how our cars work, our computers work, or our phones work than we actually know about how our bodies work. And we need to be empowered to know this stuff. So the root of the plant is very similar to the human gut. The human gut is often thought of as the root of human wellness. And they have the same job to do, which is to acquire nutrients from the outside world. And all along the human gut and the plant root are microbes. Both places are a hotbed of microbiome activity. So my story really starts in 2012. I had some super low energy. And then all of a sudden I had these like epileptic type seizures where I had 3 ambulance rides. One time I was at the doctor's office and they called the ambulance. But eventually they basically said, everything looks good, you're fine. But I felt like they were telling me, we don't know can you come back when you actually have a dis-ease that is bad enough that we can label? And of course, I wasn't satisfied with that. So I went and did probably the wrong thing, which was to ask Dr. Google. But unfortunately, in the wild, wild west of the internet, you're going to get a lot of polarization. I learned a lot, I did, but I didn't have a consistent framework to hang the new information on. In our world of polarization and opinions, it was very confusing. Eventually, I stumbled upon functional medicine. And functional medicine is basically trying to explain how your body functions and then to remove the obstacles that are impeding its ability to function and heal itself. And when I found a health coaching program, I attended the School of Applied Functional Medicine for 2 years. And they were able to, one of the things, the reason why I signed up with their program was because they were going to explain to me what my blood data said. So when I had those episodes and I went to the doctor, he didn't really look at me that much. He basically looked at the computer and looked at my lab values. And my lab values could have been in Chinese for all I could understand them. I found this very disempowering. It's my data, it's my blood. I should be able to understand, at least be able to understand some of it. So I signed up immediately to do that. But one of the biggest benefits of the program was understanding how my gut functions better. I am one of these people that has always suffered from tummy issues. And when I was learning about the gut, I was like, oh my gosh, that's just like a plant, or oh my gosh, that's just like cow's rumen, because I do have a few cows and I've studied them a lot, because you don't want anything to happen to your cows and you don't want to have to pay a vet bill. So, and then I was like, oh my gosh, that's the soil is really like that too. It's very similar when it comes to the microbes. So it was a wildly empowering time for me. And that's really why I'm talking to you now, because it was like soil health and human health. And now I'm trying to, put the two together. So as I said, the root of the plant and the human gut have the same job to do, which is to acquire nutrients from the outside world. And that there's microbes all along this root of both systems. Actually, we are all walking around with approximately 6 pounds of microbes in our stomach. And they say that this microbiome of ours is as important as any other organ. So we need to nurture it and take good care of it. So our digestive tract is approximately 26 feet long. And our intestinal wall that separates what's outside that comes inside is only one cell thick. And that's about the width of a human hair. So to protect this precious intestinal wall that has the outside coming in, we have this donut hole that runs through us. So to protect that is a mucosal lining. And this mucosal layer is produced for us mostly by microbes. It's teeming with microbes. And it's this structure that protects us, just like the rhizosphere structure. And just like the microbes in the rhizosphere of a plant, we fed that the sugar from photosynthesis, but now we have to feed all of these different microbes that you see listed here. So what do you think we could feed all the microbes that are inside of us? So the answer is prebiotics or resistant starch or fiber. So basically what I'm talking about is vegetables. So when you eat your vegetables, you're not only getting the nutrients and the energy from the vegetables, you're also getting that precious fiber, which is what those microbes need to eat. So one of the most important things we can talk about is poop, and that was where this book came in. So that might be a conversation we can talk about on farm later. But we check the waste of chickens, we check the waste of cows, we check the waste of babies just to see how they're functioning. Yet we don't talk about it with us. So that's really a taboo subject we got to get over. But you can see everything listed here, and we know maybe 5% of all the microbes in our gut. I feel like I'm talking really fast, but I want to make sure I don't run out of time. So both ecosystems, one thing that science, so this is a new frontier for science, the microbiome. And we only know 5% of the microbes in our gut, but we do know that these microbes produce a lot of beneficial compounds for us as the human host. So as the human host, we really need to apply principles, lifestyle principles, so that we can nurture them and keep them robust and have a win-win relationship with them. And it's really not rocket science, because hundreds of years before Christ ever walked the earth, Hippocrates knew that all disease begins in the gut. But with our science always wants to reduce things down. Science always wants to be able to prove things. And it's really hard to prove that your skin issue or your gout issue or your rheumatoid arthritis issue actually began in the gut. But we do need to think of ourselves and not have reductionistic thinking when it comes to health. We need to think of ourselves as an interrelated and interdependent ecosystem, and that the root of it all is our tummy. And we also think of our gut as a second brain. We'll often say, what's your gut instinct? What's your gut telling you? Listen to your gut. And at the root of that, again, are these microbes that might be able to sense our environment for safety or danger long before we're able to do that. So unfortunately, this is what sometimes happens to our garden hose of life, if you want to think of your digestive tract like that. If we are in a state of dysbiosis for year after year, and one of the things that can cause our intestinal wall to get a leak might be, and one example is to be eating a constant or an oversupply of sugar or refined grains that quickly convert to sugar, because this feeds the wrong guys in our guts. We have to be thinking of our ecosystem inside of us, and we need to be feeding them what the good guys like, and the good guys like lots of vegetables. So we don't want to feed the wrong guys. But sometimes we can also have a proliferation of good guys, but in the wrong spot too, because the microbes that are in our colon are designed to stay in our colon and not to migrate up into our small intestines. If they migrate up into our small intestines, then that's too many good guys in the wrong spot. And that's when you have SIBO, that small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. So we just want to remember that this is all the outside, where everything that comes in through our pie hole, whether it's a little bit of a toxin or a pathogen that's somehow on our food or on our hands and we touch our mouth, that this can also get in there and quickly cause problems if we do not have a good, healthy system, if we do not have a robust mucosal wall to protect us. So you've probably heard about leaky gut, and this the things with the toe-like structure on it, that's actually our intestinal wall. And those toe-like structures are the villi. And if you were to spread all of our small intestines out, we would have the surface area of a tennis court. But our digestive system, our intestinal wall is designed to selectively open and close to let properly digested food through. But if that mucosal lining is not there to protect us, if it gets damaged from trauma, these are the triggers across the top, stress, toxins, drugs. Talk for a minute about drugs. All prescription drugs are usually pretty difficult or pretty hard on your intestinal wall. But if you are in pain and you're taking ibuprofen, Advil, Tylenol, these types of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are also very hard on your mucosal lining and the microbes in your gut. If you have to take an antibiotic, anti-life, that's hard on your microbes in your gut as well. So you might just want to do some extra work to work on your gut lining if you do have an assault of any of these things. So you can see once the wrong things get through, that gets into our blood system, our immune system goes haywire. And I was taught that at the heart of every autoimmune condition is probably some leaky gut that needs to be addressed. So if you go downstream a little bit more, you'll see that the downstream effects are also unique. It might be a sinus problem for you, a brain problem for me, a skin issue, thyroid, diverticulitis in your colon, adrenal fatigue, or rheumatoid arthritis. Again, we're all unique. We're biological systems. It's hard to tell what the downstream effect is going to be, but we do need to remember that if we're not able to digest our food properly and bring on nutrients properly, then it will manifest something downstream. So what's the hope in action? What's part of the solution? It's simple, I know, but it's not easy. I know it's not easy. Eating real food, not too much, but mostly plants. So the reason that it's really difficult to do this is because big food, advertisers, food scientists, food designers, can you believe there are actually food designers? But there are, and they have been able to manipulate food, especially junk food, crap food that we know we shouldn't eat, but it's almost irresistible because they have been able to use science to combine just the right amount of sugar, right amount of fat, and right amount of starch. So it hits all of our primal addictive alert buttons, and it's hard. It's hard. But one of the things that we can do, and why programs like this and organizations like Kansas City Farm School are so important, is because we have to gather together to support each other, to really be able to disconnect from this influence and nurture our bodies and nurture each other as much as possible. So what can we do? Another thing we can do is every day eat something colorful, or multiple times a day. Try and make a point. Did I eat something colorful today? Because we know the anthocyanins, the bioflavonoids, the chlorophylls, the carotenoids, and the lycopenes of these colorful vegetables are very beneficial to us. But again, science probably knows 5% of the beneficial compounds that are involved in these healthy foods. And there's usually not a great big PR firm for, broccoli. So, plant some, get your trowel out and try and plant some unique and diverse cover crop vegetables that you can grow in your own garden. So what are we also feeding this microbial community that's there to protect and serve us? One of the things we can feed them is live cultures. So during fermentation, we again, as the managers, set the conditions to proliferate these beneficial soil-borne microorganisms. Because if we are able to do this in that salty brine, we're able to crowd out the bad guys, and we're able to allow the good guys to proliferate, the lactobacillus. And what they'll do for us is they'll be able to preserve the food, pre-digest the food for us, and give it a nice new tangy profile. And it's super good for our guts. Here's a picture of my husband built this little fermentation tank for me out of an old college refrigerator. And when I make yogurt, I make a lot of yogurt because then you get to eat yogurt ice cream. But when you eat live cultures, you're able to repopulate the microbes in your gut and help the microbes in your gut. So you're not only getting the prebiotics, you're actually getting the probiotics. And a word of caution here, though, that if you're going to eat these live cultures, you want to be careful. Like I would start with a teaspoon and work your way up maybe a couple times a day, because you can get some blowback, should we say, because you have to allow the good guys to kind of reestablish themselves, repopulate themselves, and kind of crowd out the bad guys. So it takes a while. So we cannot continue to play whack-a-mole with our downstream diseases. We must go upstream to fix our gut health, and upstream to fix our food system, and eventually upstream to fix our soil system. We can't keep waiting for somebody else to do it. We have to fix ourselves. We have to pick up a trowel and learn to garden. We have to vote with our fork, and we have to gather in community to get our resolve strong, because we need to leave. Our children deserve a chance at a beautiful and abundant earth. So this is a part of my why. Right before COVID hit, we had a new granddaughter, our first granddaughter born. And here's Violet, named her a good flower name. And I am actually feeding her, everything she's eating here is something that we grew on our farm. So it's beets and green beans and applesauce. And I'm feeding her also a probiotic yogurt. So as she gets off of the bottle and starts eating real food, I'm trying to populate her little digestive tract with the good guys. So get your antidepressants from the soil. Studies show that soil bacteria affect our neurons and may stimulate serotonin production. And Robin Walk also tells us to smell humus, that the smell of humus, breathing in the scent of Mother Earth, actually stimulates the release of oxytocin. And oxytocin is that cuddle hormone. So if you would like to be a better lover, a better mother, a better father, sister, brother, a better neighbor in this culture today, in this society, then get your hands in the soil. Get out there and work in the soil with your brothers and sisters, and we can all love each other a little easier because our bodies will be flooded with oxytocin. So our life expectancy is the result of our environment. So will our hubris keep us apart from nature, or will we have the humility to see ourselves as a part of nature? We have the skills, we have the creativity to help Mother Earth be more fruitful, to be more life-giving, and to be more beautiful. And that is our gift to creation, but it must be a partnership. So functional medicine is transforming healthcare, and regenerative agriculture is transforming industrial agriculture. If we get the soils and the plants to function correctly, we can finally produce food that is high in nutrition. And then we can say, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food.
What an awesome connection. I mean, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.